We also hope to have a video of this online. I'm going to pass this around. It's just a Google Doc on an iPad that you can fill in with whatever information you want. And if you're so inclined, I guess I could do this. I don't know if you know about the ability of the iPad to use third-party keyboards that take little radio transmitter dongles. You might have them already in your office. If you get the iPad camera connection kit, it comes with a USB port to plug your digital camera into it. If you just take that dongle, plug that right into the digital camera part, and then plug that into your iPad, you'll get a warning that says, real loud, cannot use device. Ignore it and use the device. Okay, so you can go ahead and try that. There is no mouse on the iPad, so you do not get to scroll around. I wish you could, but in typing, it's a lot nicer to use a real keyboard. And I also have had trouble with the Bluetooth keyboards, especially the Apple one, because if it's even in my house, my iPad keyboard won't come up because they're talking to each other, even if it's in the car or in the garage. So,
did you repeat the name of that white square thing?
It's called the Camera Connection Kit, and they actually sell them at the bookstore. You get two of them. One also takes an SD card. The other takes USB. And the reason that they came out with those is so you could load media onto the iPad, but it's only certain kinds of media. There's actually electronics in that dongle. So you can't plug anything in. But out of the assistive technology world, the people who are really using the iPad for students with disabilities, they're just plugging every single thing they've got into it and watching what happens. Because some of the things mimic stuff that the iPad actually works with, but the iPad doesn't know it. And in fact, there's even a recognized error that Apple will tell you about where it may not recognize one of its own dongles and it says can't use this, and you ignore it. And if you go to the website under their help, it says ignore it. Just click OK and move on with your life.
So I've tried using just a USB, like a flash drive in there. It says it can't recognize it.
It won't recognize a flash drive generally. It's looking for, I think it's a DCMI file or folder with JPEGs in it. That's what it's looking for. That's what the Camera Connection Kit recognizes. So you can't upload documents very easily to it that way. I've tried and I've been able to fool it a few times, but it gets kind of confused. A good way to do that, if you really want to explore, there is a what's called a Y drive. I'll pass this around. This is a drive, a little solid-state radio transmitter drive that you can load content on, just like you can a flash drive. But then you log into this with your wireless, and then with the app, it pops up just like regular file structure. You generally can't move stuff off of it unless there's a location for it, like open it in Goodreader, or open it in PDF Pro, or open in iBooks. But you can load it with all kinds of other documents that open just fine using just traditional apps or the movie player or audio files, things like that. This is only 16 gigabytes at the moment. They should have them huge given the price, but basically there are ways that you can actually access what feels kind of like a server with the iPad. Anyway, my name is Martin Horaci, and I did this about 2 years ago when the iPad first came out, and we were going to do it again last year, but never got around to it. There was going to be an iPad 2 release. I thought, well, that would be a great time. As you know, working at the university, stuff happens, and all of a sudden it's Christmas and spring and summer and fall, and so here we are. Udo Fluke should hopefully be here soon, and he is also a heavy iPad user. The reason I focus on the iPad versus other devices right now is because it's kind of like eBay. Schools are using the iPad because app writers are writing for the iPad because schools are using the iPad. It's a loop. If you want to use something else, it's perfectly fine, except when I go to Paxson, They're using iPads one-to-one across multiple grades. We do education here. Hellgate Elementary, Lewis and Clark, Paxson. If I say anything but the iPad, what am I going to run into? I might run into some Kindles in this class. I might run into one teacher who's using a Google tablet over here. Several people are experimenting now with the Nexus 7 and having great luck. But basically a talk like, or a presentation like this gets so wildly, genericized that you're on your own anyway. You just end up, it's like stopping by Best Buy and walking the aisles. Just what can you do? What we're after here are solutions to use these things in the educational arena, preferably, the higher ed arena. I love to work with young kids with these things, but I also understand that that's my field here. They're from all over the place. They are used all over campus. I'm trying to get some sort of an organizational count or organizational way of looking at it so we can go to IT with some numbers. One of the things that is up right now as an issue that people want to solve has to do with the Apple TV, wherever it went. The Apple TVs are a kind of like a relay device that the iPad can talk to, and then this can talk to a projector, which means you are free to do anything on your iPad and have it project wirelessly. And anyone else with an iPad could log into such a device and project. But it has to be able to be on the wireless network, and the authentication right now does not allow it because this doesn't have the capacity to deal with either GrizzGuest or the WPA. There are ways around it, but they're all illegal. Maybe. One of them is a gray area, and I actually am in that gray area right now. I plugged in a wireless router into the wall. It is not connected to the internet. If you turn on your device, you'll pick up Airport. It's just sitting there, but it's a relay device. This can talk to it, my iPad can talk to it. And there is a feature on the iPad built into the operating system that allows you to tap right into that device. And it looks like this. By the way, if you have questions about dongles, there are probably at least 4 of these things right now for the iPad. I also use interface dongles to get my iPad to do other stuff, like, my Apple TV, like HDMI to VGA converters, somehow to use old projectors. All that stuff is out there. This is one here. I also like to put these remove before flights because these things walk. I don't know how many of these I've given away over the last couple of years. Somebody runs in, they absolutely have to have it. I write my name all over them. I put stuff on them. I'm going to tie a brick to one, and that's the end of it. A lot of them are out-of-town presenters who forget them. I also do the same with computers. My bag of dongles. I once asked an Apple engineer, how do you get around this? He opens his bag and pulls out his computer bag, a bag of dongles. And the reason is they're always going to use what they think is the latest, regardless if there's a whole set of other devices that are already set up for the previous one. VGA came out of the late 1980s. It's low resolution. It's not very good, but it's kind of a standard. We're trying to move away from it. I was hoping HDMI, but it turns out there's another thing on the forefront. I don't remember the name of it, but that's supposed to be way better than HDMI. So maybe, do you know the name of it?
No, but I know what you're talking about. It's the newest thing.
Yeah, so we might want to leapfrog HDMI. But I have found solutions to move between these worlds. Anyway, on the iPad, I'm going to use a standard out to a VGA and plug it into laptop. And
there it goes.
Okay, here's my iPad. This thing. And I have, need duct tape. Duct tape. Okay. Anyway, if I double click on my my home button, you can see things pop up down here. Right here, if I wasn't connected to VGA, would pop up a little square. It's actually called a squircle. Is that right? You math folks in here? It's actually, I had to actually look it up. It's a real shape. It's kind of like a circle with rounded corners. I mean, a square with corners or a circle with edges. But anyway, the button that'll pop up, can you get a dock cam going?
No,
You might be able to. Is actually going to connect. It's going to go wirelessly directly to the device. Oh, I know why. Because it's up here. Where did I put it? There it is. If I plug this into the wall, now you'll see that button like that. This is Matt's, by the way. Let's see if that'll kick on now. Might or might not. But anyway, that's once it does. That's not showing up. Matt, do you know if there's a VGA dongle, if I can get the AirPlay to show up? It'll be a button right here. Find the airport, I'm live. Anyone who's got an iPad, what? Oh, there it goes, right here. So if I push that, just takes a moment. See what comes up, Apple TV, and it's picking up or the iPad. I can actually project then if this was connected to my projector. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to disconnect what I've got there, plug this thing in, which is an HDMI to VGA converter, and then tie it into the Apple or into the projection system, which has, as you can see, hiccups that are we've got 30 years worth of different technologies going on right now. So anyway, there are solutions there, but I have to be able to talk to it. And right now, that thing is right here. If I go into my settings and go to my wireless, see it's picked up airport right there. That's that little white device. That device, I think, is from 2001. Not just because it looks like a flying saucer. I'm going to hold that up for a sec. It's just an old wireless router I had sitting on my antique shelf. But anyway, it does the job. But it's that gray area. Even though it's not connected to the internet, it is a radio transmitting device. So are almost all the computers and laptops and phones and everything else. It's not connected to the internet, so I don't know how it's not secure, since you can't get anywhere with it. But again, it's one of those gray areas that I'm hoping if we can have some consensus on what our needs are with the iPad, we can go to IT and say, let's find a solution for this. And it easily can be a different kind of secure system. Oddly, almost all the Ethernet ports around are direct connect. So if you really wanted to get into the system, you just do that. It's a lot faster too. So I think we maybe have some legacy of our understanding of how wireless networks are used in an enterprise. Since if it's really that fear, well, we can actually, or anyone who wanted could bypass that without any trouble, just not sitting in their car. So that might be the difference. Anyway, question?
Would you have to have a consensus if there was a need for it for people with disabilities? I mean, a lot of them are using iPads now.
That's an excellent question, and it might actually be the avenue in, except folks with disabilities aren't allowed to violate any of our policies. Yeah, that might be a strong way. I think what's happened is that we've a lot of us have hit the wall, and just we're not supposed to do that, and then we just do workarounds or these, or we forget it, and so we aren't really seeing that there's, at the IT level, that there's a need for this, because none of us are really, banding together in the oval, waving flags, saying we've got to have this. Instead, it's like, oh well, and we move on. But that's why something like this, if you're aware that this technology is here, it's $100 technology, and they sell them in the bookstore. I don't know, are they using them in the dorms somehow?
No, it's even harder in the dorms.
Yeah.
They're even harder.
So it's a fast solution to instantly make a nice seamless transition. MCPS, the local school district, is using these. They can just walk into a classroom, $100, the iPads all talk to the projectors. It's that fast. The other thing I wanted to mention about the dongles, my bag, there it is there are several different types of them. The dongles, HDMI will go. There's a, oh, it's not here. These are the two most common ones. This is the standard 32 pin out, which is changing with probably whatever the next device is. So then there's going to be another dongle to put. I'm a little worried because each dongle takes a little bit of energy and the output is not strong on the iPad. So it can't run devices. But this dongle is the iPad out with with HDMI. So you can plug it into the new large screen televisions. It works quite well. And it also has another 32 pin connector, which I have fun trying these different things, that you could actually plug your regular USB cable in order to charge it, because generally if you occupy the plug, you can't charge your iPad, which means you're limited if you don't have a full battery, limited in your projection, which is also why this AirPlay is quite good. However, I have managed to get one of these connected to an HDMI connector, one of these that's powered, and was able to then plug in everything. But now I was 2 converters downstream, because now I'm going from 32 to HDMI and HDMI back to VGA, but then I could actually plug USB in. I wouldn't mess around trying to figure this out, just charge your iPad, but basically we're painting ourselves in a corner in some ways with these devices and all of these things that are, probably should be built in a little bit better. Well, if they went with a VGA out like a lot of tablets, all of a sudden their thickness just went up by a ½ inch. Plus, these have a tendency to break off inside the devices because this is a pretty beefy connection, and most of the cords that we use are quite beefy. So then what happens is they have a lot more broken iPads. So there's a reason, and a lot of the other companies have dropped it, and all the Ultrabooks now, Dell, HP, etc., have all dropped it. So you are seeing a realization that we've got to move forward. Any questions about the dongles or connections, etc.? What I want to do now, any questions about any of the iPad stuff? We have a couple of short presentations, and I'd like to get to those. Any things you're wondering about?
Just the advertisements on the posters where you get going.
Okay. There are 2 people I'd like to introduce first. Do you want to tell us who you are?
My name is Josh Austin. I'm the former Apple campus rep, which is where I met Martin at the first time. I was at the first meeting 2 years ago. Now I am a developer for the University of Montana Mansfield Center Defense Critical Language and Culture Program. I develop iPad apps for the university. I also am the owner and partner of Mobile Minds LLC, a new startup here in Missoula that is dedicated to mobile application development, which started out of a project doing augmented reality language learning. I'm actually also the vice president of Computer Science Club, which is volunteering to teach Android development and some interaction at the Lewis and Clark dealing with iPads and everything else over there.
Excellent. The other person I wanted to introduce is Nassim. He is a scholar from Iraq who is joining us for the year. And I'm working with him in a somewhat unusual capacity, but he is also going to be learning, along with me, to write, at the moment, a children's book and poetry book in Arabic for iBooks. So, tell us just briefly who you are. And
Yes, my name is Yassin Khalaf. I'm a visitor professor from University of Technology. I have lectures in both the University of Technology and the University of Baghdad for teaching staff. My field of study is instructional technology or educational technology. I am very pleased, very happy, sorry about my language, to be combined with Prof. Martin, which is, I can't teach anything sophisticated or developed, but I can give you, my colleagues, an idea what is the, well, electric poverty and something what to did for the people. You have everything very nice, so I would like to say I am looking forward how can we produce kind of story for children. By the way, I am like your lecture very much, and with iPad, unfortunately, I haven't any experience about digital technology. So I think in the future, iPad should make different changes in schools. That's what I...
Thank you. I hope I don't have, but I handed him one of his first days here, an iPad with Google Earth on it, and I zoomed into Baghdad. And I was like, where do you live? Where did you live? And he sat there and said, oh my God, oh my God. You know, just literally, it was like, I could just see straight out of Star Trek, handing that tablet, you know, and just, here you go, and he's moving around. Unbelievable. It was magic. Anyway, I'm going to do a very quick one on iBooks. We have Udo Fluke, who's going to do presentations. We have Jason Neifer, who is going to, what are you going to do? Good reader?
Yeah, good reader and Evernote.
And Evernote. And Jonathan Crummett, he's excellent at art, movie making, and photography.
I'm not excellent at them, I just like to type.
But I'm going to do a very quick demonstration. I'm going to build an iBook. You probably have seen iBooks. It is a proprietary Apple book design. If you heard Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, on, was that Tuesday, basically said, we got to go to digital books. Other countries are doing it. That's not always the reason to do it, but I agree. And in fact, a lot of times people say, well, let's look at the cost benefit. And I look at, if you have that device, you got to look at all of the costs it can save you, not just a textbook. And every day my kids come home from school with upwards of 20 pounds of books for maybe 2 pages. So I'm all for it. But what I've got is my laptop open, and I'm going to open the program called iBooks Author. It's a free program that you can download on a Mac. It's like a word processor. I'm going to build a program, or build a book about meteorites. I have opened a template. That's all I've done. I opened the program, opened a template. Notice it's got the fake Latin. You can replace all this. I've also made a folder with stuff in it. I've got some pictures. I have some text. In fact, I'm going to go right to my text here. So kindly provided to me by Wikipedia. And I'm just literally, you can see this text, just a bunch of text. It's got links and all kinds of stuff, quite handy. I just highlighted all of it. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to close this because I don't need it anymore. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go ahead and start my book. Whoops. If I wanted to type something here, obviously I could. I can make this all fine and dandy. Okay? So, what I'm going to do now, open this up. I've designed a cover. I can obviously change things. I'm in chapter 1. Change your names quite easily. Okay? Once I have my ideas, and I've started to populate my page with stuff. Let's see, I'm going to go into I want to go to where it is, my chapters. I can obviously edit this. Headers go beginning. I just pasted all my text here, the whole thing. There it is. So all of this is now a book. I'm going to add some stuff. I need a picture, so literally, I'm just going to throw the picture in. Come over here. Here's a picture. Drop that in. One of those things from Mars. Here's another one. I'll drop that in. It's a little big. I can resize it. So I'm just kind of making this book as I go. You can see what it's looking like. Beginning. There's a picture. I'm going to put a movie in here. Insert. And in this case, how about media? So it gives me a window. I'm going to go back over, and I just happen to have some M4V files. I'll just drop that in. There's a meteorite falling. I'm going to go over here. I'll drop another one in right here. So I'm just saying insert, go to my widgets, media, and I'm going to grab. If you grab something that doesn't work, you get a warning. If I get a warning like this, I just throw it in iMovie and convert it, save it. And I get a new one, another one. So I'm looking for M4Vs. There it is. So this is kind of what my book is looking like at the moment. Here's the beginning, 2 lines, right? Didn't know red line under it. Lost. I can move these things around, change sizes. I'm going to do something else kind of interesting here. I am going to throw in a 3D graphic. I'm first going to do it. And the second thing to show you where you get these. I just went out, pulled one off of the site. Okay, so then 3D molecule. Put it off to the side. Anything else? If I had an audio file, other pictures, you get the idea. So here's my book. Then I am going to export my book, iBook. I'll say meteorite book to the desktop. There it goes. I'm done. Okay. If I go into go online, I can go to the Trimble warehouse. Okay, it's 3D SketchUps. The reason you do this is because this is where all those cool 3D things are. When I enter the warehouse, I've got all kinds of collections of 3D stuff. And any of these, if I want, I can actually, almost any of them, I can pull off and use in my iBook. I might do, how about DNA? So here's one. I can click on it. That's the one that I just dropped into my book. Download model. This COLLADA is the file type you need. All I do is just hit download. There, bing, I'm done. What that would look like is this. It'll show up as a folder. Inside the folder is my DNA molecule. And I drag that in. Let's look at it on an iPad. So what I'm going to do...
And these are copyright?
Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them are free to use, some you give credit to, some are... It all depends. If you're going to give this to students in an educational arena, which is what I'm going to show you right here, things are a little bit looser than they are, obviously, if you try to put it on Apple's website. So, open up Gmail, send myself an email. Get this thing going. There we go. Compose. There it is. I'm going to attach a file. What am I doing? A meteorite book right there. Choose. Send. All right. That's sending. It takes a little bit. This is a 14 megabyte file. When I go over to my iPad now, crash it. Pull this out. Wait just a second. send an email. Okay. I'm going to disconnect this and plug my iPad in. You can see what it looks like on the receiving end, so you can literally have these download off of servers or email them right to students, or you can, of course, have the students build the thing. It's checking. So it's tied in probably to that airport, which doesn't work. That's the problem with those things. Okay, there it is. No subject, me. So I click on that. It opens up this. There's nothing in there but this file. When I click on the file, it gives me a choice. And the choice is open it in iBooks or something else. I'll choose iBooks. Goes to my iBook collection. There's my book. Here it is. So, what does it look like? What you can do, bring up pages. Here's my interactive molecule. You go full screen if I want to study DNA. Here's my video. So it looks like full screen.
Martin,
Yeah.
can you download iBooks to a PC?
At the moment, you can.
Okay.
Close this, all right? I don't know why my molecule is taking over, but anyway. I'm running video there. I've got pictures.
I think you got them overlapping.
Yeah, it's probably over. It's on top because I was in a hurry. Here's another movie. You run full size, it's a meteorite falling. So you can see, and if I turn it, that's this way, but let's say I want to just scan through the text. If you turn the iBook this way, all of that fancy hypermedia gets shoved to the side, so you can easily move through it like a traditional book. The moment I turn it horizontal, then you get all of the media full size. Okay? So it is possible to quickly make iBooks. If I spent, gosh, an hour doing this, I could have a really nice iBook. And it can be distributed by email, throw it on a server, it can be edited later because you keep the original file. You can actually have students compile stuff and you throw it into the iBook. Yes?
There's testing capabilities in that.
Yeah, there's actually, again, I'm just trying to keep this under about 6 minutes, but yeah, there are tons of capabilities within iBooks. If you want to, what I usually do is I'll bring up other books that have different kinds of content in them. This is going to have one. What's another one I want? Try physics, Mike. I don't know if it's got that text, but you can go into these and see almost all these features are available. Some of these people have a lot more money, so they can build out much more elaborate things. But there is, yeah, you can have testing, you can have quizzes. Actually, this is an interactive graphic. So it's actually showing you the wavelength. Anyway, I can do quizzes. I want to turn it over to Udo at this moment, though. Make sure he has time. Me, okay, yes, presenting. And this is supposed to be informal. That's what the first I is. By the way, you can attach or you can hold objects like lenses, magnifiers, etc., right on your iPad cameras. If you want to take close-ups with them. Where that's kind of handy is you can turn your your projection system, basically your iPad projecting out into an opaque projector by just holding going a front side camera and just holding the object over the camera. You also get to see what it's doing on the your screen. So it is possible to use your iPad as a projector. I mean, as an opaque projector, if you want to, or a dot camera as well. Go ahead. Go, sir.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks for inviting me. When Martin and I talked, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Udo Flug. I work in international programs. I'm also an adjunct in the Department of Anthropology and teach there currently. And I have been an iPad owner and user for the last 2 years. And I've tried to, holding a degree in educational technology from years back from this fine institution, I've always tried to sort of be on the forefront, realizing that one might not be the most entertaining speaker, but one could certainly make things interesting with the appropriate educational technology and actually get students to be interested in the way on how to do it, and then through that learn the information. So I've been trying to go completely paperless over the years, but there's still some paper, but I've actually been quite happy with really reducing it and doing a lot of the electronic stuff that is there, and iPads are just absolutely incredible. What I'd like to look at real quick today is look at some apps and some ebooks, some security aspects, especially when we go to clouds, and then look at some presentations to just give you a little bit of an overview. As far as the iPad and iPad applications, of course, make the lives of educators so much easier. The iPad can be used, of course, as an instructor station with a projector, as we're doing right here, if this would be a lecture, as a student workstation where you actually turn the iPad over to a student or a student group and have them work with it, or as a group collaboration device where people are sharing information and passing it around. And then, of course, the iPad can morph between uses by whatever app that is open and can switch back and forth. And this is really nice because it allows for incredible speed, and it provides students with a well-rounded lesson that nurtures them both inside and outside of the classroom. So if your students have an iPad, of course, you can tell them, go and do this, get this app, do this yourself, and then there's sort of this involved learning style. As far as looking at this, class preparation is a segment I want to quickly look at as far as organizing all your classes using the iPad, creating and modifying student seating plans, for example. And then as far as teaching, using Dropbox for teaching, I always have my iPad with my lecture notes that I look at, and then I have this on Dropbox. So I'm operating on 2 different systems. But when I have a bullet here, let's say iBook publications, I can then go at my iBook publication information and talk about the individual bullets without the student seeing all of that. So my lecture notes are on here while this system is running off of the lecture that I actually composed. And then a really important one, looking at student assessment, utilizing the iPad and apps to aid in student evaluation. And there are actually some great programs out there. Photo documentation of individual and group projects with the iPad, taking photos. They have a program where you can take a photo of your class and use face recognition program so that it hones in on each face of the student sitting there, creates a file, and then you can use this to, at the end of the class, assign participation points or things like that, because the software looks at the class and says, this is Brian. Brian was really active today, plus, and enters it right into your system. So what you used to do on a piece of paper, and probably, especially in bigger classes, not realizing who the person is and what their name is, now this software does it for you. It's absolutely incredible. And then looking at voice memos for iPad, where you can actually record things, and make them available as sound files. Let's say a student will say, I'd love to come to your lecture, but I can't make it today. Is there any way I can listen to this? You don't have to call IT anymore. You just record your own lecture on your iPad and then put the sound file on Moodle, and the student can listen to the entire lecture really easy. And since it's your product, your voice, there is no copyright issue. You can send it to anybody you want to. Gigi.
Can it be downloaded onto the web?
Of course, yeah. Track student participation and digital gradebook function, all of this, and I don't know how much time Martin can give me here, and I don't want to take too much time, but probably just in really briefly going over this. As I said, seating plans and charts, and class lists with student photos can be extremely useful when you take a photo of class, and then you basically are creating a digital map of this. You are putting in the individual photos of the students, and you can track things. You have the visual to go with the learner information, and it's all digital. The student can access it and has an individual access code, can look at where they are, what their participation has been, score on quizzes, things like that. Data backup is another important one that I really have benefited from using Dropbox, which is probably, I think, the biggest service that is out there, and you probably have seen their little icon where you can store all the information, and then no matter where you are, you can access it. And should you ever lose your product or this falls to the ground and doesn't work anymore, I actually still have everything remotely on Dropbox and can access it from some other point. So when we look at Dropbox, what is Dropbox? It's a free cloud storage service, and there are many out there. This one is unique because over 2 million people are currently using Dropbox. You can access your files from any device, a Mac, Windows, Android, BlackBerry, what have you. It allows you to bring photos, docs, videos anywhere where you want to go by not physically having them with you, but by having them somewhere where you can access it. You probably have all been in the situation where you have something on your office computer, go home on the weekend, and you want to work on something Saturday afternoon. And you go, oh, that file is actually on my office computer. Now I have to go to the office to work there. You can't do it at home. Or you worked on something at home, you're in the office, and you're saying, I wanted to work on that lecture for next week, but the file is somewhere else. If you put it all on Dropbox, no matter where you are, you can access it, work on it, and then if you sync it to different devices, it's always going to be updated. So if I work on something in my office and hit save, it's going to be synced on my computer at home, and it's going to be synced right here. So I can go to the other device, make modifications, and I'm always current. It's synced to a computer, allows for work both online and offline, so you could sync it to your computer and then get in the car and drive to Great Falls, and you could work on this in the car, not while you're driving, but let's assume somebody else is driving, and then you could work on this offline, get into your hotel room in Great Falls for a conference, let's say, and as soon as you walk into the hotel and it gets the Wi-Fi connection, it uploads it back to Dropbox and has updated the file. This is actually fairly secure. It uses the AES 256 encryption standard. It's the same one that you use for internet banking. So I don't think Dropbox has been hacked yet, Martin, has it?
It had one leak. I don't know if it was a hack. I think they...
It's just incredibly safe. So
way safer than...
Yeah.
It does not meet HIPAA standards.
What?
It does not meet HIPAA standards.
It probably, you wouldn't want to store private financial information on there, but as far as, work-related stuff, lectures and things, you're probably fairly safe.
There is something I should point out on devices, as this PowerPoint said, you have access to them, but on your computer, it actually is resident on your computer.
That's right.
The file, everything exists there. So if you unplug it out of the wall, or no way, you still have those documents. On these devices, it's only good if they're wirelessly connected. So they're not here because you fill them in.
So how does Dropbox compare to the cloud that Apple offers?
It's the same system. And
Very
it's
similar. The
yeah.
cloud has got all kinds of other similar things or other features, I guess, attached to it that are more Apple oriented.
And Dropbox is cross-platform,
Yeah.
so it works on every device as
Yeah.
opposed to iCloud, which is Apple grade and every
Right.
other device not great.
Yeah.
And I think that's their biggest advantage. The other thing, of course, is that I have the smallest iPad available, and if there would be one even smaller than that, I would have bought that, because you're really not storing anything on here. So you don't need to go up to 32 or 64, because you don't really need it. There's nothing on here. It's the operating system accessing Dropbox and having everything there. And Dropbox is free up to, I think, 2 gigs, and then after that you can easily add to it. If you refer somebody to Dropbox, they're going to get free storage, and you're going to get free storage. All it takes is in one class to say, hey, everybody want to get on Dropbox? You're going to have storage till the end of your days.
Yeah, I
Because
think I have 10 gigs.
yeah, it's like never going to fill up. As far as teaching, and this is where I really use this, avoid paper lecture notes, improve the organization of everything, because everything is coordinated, improve access, last minute changes can be made and updated on Dropbox. You don't have any paper anymore. Develop lecture and lecture notes for oneself, as in this example, and store it on Dropbox, and create a PowerPoint presentation for the students or an audience, as you see here, and store it on Dropbox, and then you can access it and have 2 different systems where you have information here for you to read while the student cannot see everything that you have here.
Could you explain that point about how you have things on the iPad that the students cannot see in the presentation?
Well, let's say I want to sort of remind myself. Sometimes I put a note in my lecture note saying, tell students about anecdote in Kenya. And that I would see here, but the student wouldn't see that. Because it's 2 different systems. Oh, well, it's not. It's the same system. It's using 2 different files on Dropbox. One lecture file and one projection file. That's how I have them labeled. iBooks is an electronic book application, of course, and Martin mentioned it. It's an incredible tool, aside from, of course, making your own text. And sometimes I find myself teaching classes that are so new in the field that international or global studies, for example, there aren't a whole lot of textbooks out there. So I put stuff together and basically can make my own textbook really quick, really efficient, and really engaging and entertaining for students. But then you can also, of course, go out, and you have a lot of books that are out there that are really easy to access. Most of them are free, some of them are a couple bucks depending on, and then you go into textbooks, they get a little bit more expensive, but still, all you have to have is an iTunes account and iBooks on your computer, and then you can download things like Teaching with the iPad for $1.99. And it has individual chapters on giving presentations, engaging collaboration, polls and assessment, recording screencast applications. There's one example of a publication that's really helpful if you teach with it. Another one is integrating iPads in the classroom. This one is free. Again, looking at different sort of applications that you can do in a classroom setting. There's one, changing student engagement with the iPad, in sort of looking at really making this interactive, making movies, making sort of digital reports that the student feels to be part of the class and not being taught at, but being part of the teaching arrangements. iPads and Education, the Essential Guide is another one that I can highly recommend, that I have used over the years, and that has been really helpful. And then last but not least, lecturing with the iPad, which is sort of the idea of you know, this is what you used to do, back away from this podium and from this idea, and what more can you do today than what the old overhead projector used to. And a lot of people that used to teach with this say that this is so incredible and really changed the way of teaching, because you had something you could write on. You could actually roll the the clear paper back and forth. You could go back and forth and really sort of be flexible. Well, the iPad can do that too. And for the first time, you really sort of have this flexibility. But lecturing with the iPad is another publication that I can really recommend. As far as student assessment, just a few words on that. When a student gives a presentation or writes something in an electronic format, I record and write presentation notes directly on my iPad when I'm sitting in a presentation using New Notes or Pen Ultimate apps to take notes on the student, create a link to the saved student presentation on my Dropbox so students can access it. Photo document individual and group projects using the iPad camera. So if there is a certain arrangement or a presentation of something, take a photo of it, put it up on your Moodle page, people can look at it. Record student comments or questions in the classroom via voice memos. If it's a big discussion, you could record the entire discussion and then next class session say, we're going to go to question number 4, where normally you would have to write all of that down. Now you have it all recorded. And then, of course, looking at gradebooks, there's Teacher's Assistant Pro and Gradebook Pro. Those are two that I find particularly helpful. Looking at the first one, New Notes or Pen Ultimate, take handwritten notes and drawings on your iPad. What is neat about this is I think that in an age where we're almost moving completely away and using our hand for writing, this is sort of a hybrid. It's a writing that is digitalized, and then you can send this to yourself via email to others. You can make a PDF of it, put it somewhere. So it's incredibly helpful, and it turns a handwritten into something else. You get the natural experience of writing on paper with the flexibility of a tablet, really is what it is. Stay organized. One way of doing it, if you use Pen Ultimate, for example, but other programs are the same, is you in essence create little books with notes that you can go through, and there's an infinite number of these that you can put on your iPad virtually. I don't know when this would be maxed out, but it isn't in my case, and I again have the smallest one. And then you can just tap on this, and the little notepad opens, and you have your note for a specific lecture or for a specific thing. Photo document, I took a photo of the flyer that Martin developed, and then, as you saw coming in, highlighting things. You can email them, print them, assign them to a contact in your contact list, post them on Moodle, put them on Facebook, do all kinds of stuff. This is another thing. A steady sort of document camera device or holder. They range from about $10 to $70. These are sort of the really unique cheap ones, but somebody still figured out a way to charge $10 for a little plastic thing where the corner fits in. But you have these really sophisticated stands that you can almost use as a camera tripod. And you can then set them up and take a photo of the class, things like that. You can have them with a rotating function, so you can rotate and do things. These are around $60 or $70, but really practical as well. Voice memos for iPad, as I said, the idea is about 99 cents in expense, and you can record things. They make sound files. You can name the sound file lecture, for example, or memo or idea. I find this helpful even when I'm at home on the weekend and I have an idea for a lecture. I get my iPad out and I just say, note to myself, for Monday, go to the Mansfield Library and check out this video on such and such. And then I have these notes that I listen to when I get to the office, really practical, or you can record entire sessions. And then last but not least, the digital grade book. The idea and the prices there vary. I found a bunch of them that were between $5 and $10. I think that's about maximum, where you can create files in essence and label them in a certain way. Late for class, probably that wouldn't apply in a university because almost everybody comes late for a class running across campus. But you can have a name, you can have a photo, you can look at points, you can look at assignments, and really sort of do this creatively. And the good thing is you always have access to it on your iPad, at home, in the office. When you take papers home to grade on the weekend, you can update things. It's really practical. You can put in check marks. when information is missing, things like that. And then you even can sort of look at all categories and look at absences, grades recorded, participation, things of that nature. And then last but not least, Martin, can we quickly do a teaching, or do you want to move on and we leave this one?
We've got, the bookstore has generously provided some door prizes.
I think I'll stop right here.
Oh, okay.
But just as an, I mean, it's just, there's so much information, and
we're going to try to do this every semester. And maybe have it more, maybe even a beginning and a more advanced version of it. Because I got about as many people are here, I got emails saying I can't be there, we need a video, or we need a podcast, or, you know, keep me involved, send me all the materials, etc. So.
Are you going to do that? Are you going to send it or post it?
Well, we've got a video going, so we'll probably start with that. We may open up some other way to share this stuff, maybe even a Google user group. So we might do that. I want to quickly...
thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. Wow. I don't know any of this. We've got 3 things to give away, plus their drink coupons from the market. We've got everyone signed in. You signed in on a row. You didn't over there?
Yeah.
Oh, quickly enter those. Jonathan quickly downloaded a random number generating app. We put it to 1 to 22 now.
1 to 22, not 2 to 22?
Or 2 to 22, sorry. So we got you're 21, 22. Anyone else?
You're 20, 21.
Yeah, 21.
Small question to the program. Is that possible? I'm not going to
sure.
talk about
Yes, yeah. Real quick.
Sir, excellent lecture. You mentioned the advantage of iPad. Do you think, especially with primary or secondary school level, the students, the people, when they have iPad or iPad, and they are free inside, outside school, which connected in internet, do you think we need to think about what the effect of this technology in the hand of young people? You didn't mention disadvantages.
I told them not to.
That's a very good point. And having children of my own, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, the 6-year-old is just in 1st grade, and he's faster on the iPad than I am because, you know, he's done it all his life, really, been exposed to some kind of a computer technology. But I think you're absolutely right. While I think they're naturally connected to this, young people are, there is an important aspect of sort of human interaction that when you're doing this, you're losing some aspect of human connection and human interaction. And that's why I'm very, very skeptical of pure online structures where you don't have any human at all. You're just sort of talking to a computer the entire time. And I don't think that that's the way to go either. I think a hybrid is ideal, where there is some human interaction and some perhaps guidance from a human brain and not a computer-generated response. But I think that this, as you saw, is just so incredibly flexible and diverse that it would be sad if we wouldn't use the technology that is there.
Thank you.
That can even be misused.
Right.
Or substituted like babies do. We've got a random number generator up here, and he's got the list of people. So Matt from the bookstore, let's do
11, which is...
We're the John Stylish. Yassine got it?
No. He's in. 11 is Linda Bailey.
He was
Linda? Jot stylus. If you haven't used one of these, it's one of the better kinds of styluses for an iPad, much more natural. How about a Compass iPad stand? 12. Who is it? Oh, you got an iPad stand and an iPad bag. Who's number 9?
Pam Shaw.
There you go. All right. We actually have this room for a little longer, but I wanted to try to make sure that I was hoping for an end. I feel like I'm in a debate. I lost control. Anyway, so much good stuff. We're going to try to do it every semester. If you want to stay, Jason, are you available still? Sure. Yeah, Jason's got some time to go over some of the well, two pieces of software in particular that seem to be way up on the gotta use, gotta have list. You want to fire up your video though? No, you can do this right now because video won't take long, right? While I was talking, while Udo was talking, Jonathan made a movie on his iPad.
We did this at a conference we had here last spring. But I really like using the iPad to produce with, so like using iMovie. And another project that I'm working on that I won't get to since we're pressed for time is my wife always likes me to tell her stories. She's gone overseas to take care of her father, so I've illustrated like a children's book in one program, and then I've pulled all the pages into iMovie where I can voice narrate it and then render it out as a movie and send it to her. So anyway, but so as we were doing this, yeah, I made a little. We probably won't get any music with it, but
You know, full screen. We can hook up music. Is it? You have it?
oh yeah, put that one in there. I am kicked up. Anyway. Oh, full. I think I have to render it out.
Okay. This is in the editing mode.
Yeah.
The rendering takes time. You don't have any time.
Well, yeah, we'd used it once before. We had a conference here where throughout the day of the conference, I went around as the iPad recording stuff. Even the closing ceremonies, like we recorded it, and then we kicked it out really quick, and then so that's as far as I got to with it on there. But I rendered it out and then showed it as the last thing, and so it was like kind of a little.
I don't know why. The problem was his iPad shut off after 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So set it, all our iPads, when we're in a situation like this, you go to the auto lock and set it to never. I mean, that gives you, 8, 10 hours probably, but you don't want it turning off. Okay.
Udo was saying, what size iPad do you think is fine to get?
Well, there's 16, 32, and 64.
I think the biggest and it's the smallest.
Do you have a 16?
I have two 16 actually. One is an iPad 1 and this is an iPad 2. And I on both there's enough room. And I have 200 apps on this one and probably 100 apps on the one at home. Children's learning games and things like that. And it uses a fraction of the space. It's because all of my lectures and all of my stuff is not on here, that's on Dropbox.
I'd say Udo is like maybe 80% of the people on planet 16 plenty of space.
We're not 80%.
Yeah, well, the students are going to have a little students will have a little trouble with 16 gigs because some textbook files, we've seen all of the media that Martin's put in there. Those are very large files, those textbooks. So if you are a student who plans on using this one, a lot of textbooks, you may need different textbooks.
The biggest is 32?
64 at the moment. We do have, you want to introduce yourself, Chuck? This is Chuck Kinney.
Sorry I was late. I'm actually the Apple account executive for the state of Montana. I work with all the higher education accounts in universities, so I just wanted to stop by and say hi today, and I've known Mark for quite a while now. If I can answer your questions afterwards, I'd be glad to do it. Great presentation. Thank you so much.
This is Jason Nyfer. He's the curriculum director of the Montana Digital Academy. It's a 100% online high school. It's actually, are you the largest or second largest in terms of student?
We're the largest.
Largest high school in Montana.
What's it called?
Montana Digital Academy. We're a UM-hosted organization.
It's on the third floor of this building.
So, I just want to show off something really quickly. There's one application that I find kind of critical on the iPad. I've been in an attempt to be a paperless guy for several years, and I've largely accomplished it with one sole exception. I can't do a to-do list on an application. I can't, there's wonderful cloud-based, it works on everything, and shockingly enough, I have a clipboard upstairs that has notebook paper in it, that's where my to-do list lives. But one of the things that I've noticed over time is that I don't go to a meeting without a laptop or device to type on, and that's twofold. The first one is I like to take notes and write things down, have things for later. My handwriting is awful, so that's not very useful to me. But more importantly, and I'll be really honest, sometimes meetings aren't worth my time. And since I have lots of things to do and little time to do them in, if the meeting takes a turn for the waste of time, then I like to have a device so I can make that time useful for me. One of the unfortunate parts of our current social society is that laptops are seen as rude by some people at meetings, which is kind of amazing in a tech-savvy world that we have people that would look down upon the use of a laptop during a meeting, especially if it's a boring meeting that no one made a good agenda for. But that said, though, I've noticed that the iPad itself really has a lot less negativity hooked to it, that you can pull out your iPad and well, be playing Angry Birds for all I know, and people don't seem to take that as negatively. So I don't type very well on the iPad, and I'm a pretty decent touch typist, and so I've actually adapted to a different keyboard for when I'm in meetings now. So I carry this as just an old iPad case where my iPad lives, and I do have the nice smart case that goes on it so I can turn it to a stand and such. But when I'm typing on it, this is a Logitech, it's called a thin keyboard for iPad, and it quite literally takes the iPad and it pairs via Bluetooth, and you put the iPad in on top, and then it kind of takes a laptop feel to it. And it's big enough to where I'm more comfortable typing with it. It's not so big that it turns it into a big device, so I can bring it to a meeting and feel okay about doing that. And then, although I don't like it as a cover, it does have a magnet in it, so it can serve as a smart cover as well. So I can literally walk around with just this as a cover to my iPad.
Do you carry those in the bookstore?
Yeah, they're normally $100. You can save $5.
Yep, and it was worth. I did pay the retail price for it when it first came out, and although I don't use it all the time with my iPad because I like the mobility nature of it, that's pretty critical for me as an application. So I do use that quite a bit for taking notes. But I've always found it necessary to have, there are 1,000 applications that are useful, I think, in an educational context. One of the problems I have with the app architecture, and by the way, I'm a complete Mac person. I use an iPhone, I use an iMac desktop, I use an a MacBook Air for my laptop. But even though I do live a little bit in a PC world in my organization, I like to have things that talk to each other. And so the one app that I use exclusively for that is something called Evernote. And Evernote works somewhat like Dropbox, although I'm a big Dropbox user too. But this is a cloud-based note-taking device, basically. And you'll notice that there's no rhyme or reason. There's literally everything in here from doctoral class notes that I've been studying for comps, to random thoughts, to lists for students that I need to check up on. It's where I do all my evaluation of teachers in my program. I mean, it's a pretty extensive thing. But what I like about it is that it really gives a means to sit down and put a bunch of information in one location, and then it also syncs to the cloud. So if I download Evernote to my PC, or I download Evernote to one of my Macs, or I download to my iPhone, it can put all those things together. So let me give you an example of that. So I'm here in Evernote, and if I decide that I want to create a new note, I just click on Create a New Note. You'll notice it geolocates me, so it's used my iPad's location services to say that it's a note from University of Montana in Missoula, so it's found where I'm located at. And if I had this on my calendar, sorry Martin, then it would have also taken the note for my calendar of where I'm located at and what medium I'm at, and turned that into the note name. So I can use this very easily for note taking. What I like about it is it's quite multimedia, so if I want to, I can definitely type things into here, and that's really great and fairly useful when I'm in a meeting. But it can also do the same thing with photos. It can also do the same thing with audio. So let me give you a couple examples. So if I click on audio now, it's now recording my voice. So literally, if I'm at a meeting and I want to record the meeting, or if I want to record myself or make a note, as the gentleman talked about earlier, I'm able to do that. When I press done, that object is now in my Evernote, which if I go to my Evernote on my machine upstairs, it's ready for me to download on all my devices at once. That's particularly useful for me because I also have an iPhone. I can take the iPhone. I actually live in Helena, and my job is here, and I go to school here, so I commute back and forth quite a bit. My wife has been really getting on me for typing in the car on my phone, so I don't do that anymore. So one of the things I do is I literally load Evernote up before I leave in the car and have a note going, and I think of things as I'm driving back and forth in the long time in the car, and I'll literally make notes to myself. I kind of feel like kind of a geek doing it, but then I have an audio note when I get to work, so I can go back and review all those pieces without me doing that. Also, if you have a newer iPad, the newer iPads actually have an impressive amount of feature functionality in it. For example, the iPad 3, it actually does text recognition, so I'm speaking now a little slower and clearer, so I can actually speak into my Evernote, and it does text-to-speech. We'll see how good it is here. It's not so bad. And so that's pretty amazing, I think, and so Evernote's been a critical piece for me. I also do spend a lot of time putting pictures of things. My organization really loves whiteboards. I hated them when I was a teacher. I hate them now. We spend a lot of time putting notes up on whiteboards. And one of the things that I can also do is take pictures of whiteboard drawings and put them as part of my Evernote, and then go back and refer to it later. And I think I had an example of one. Yeah, here we go.
Like my office.
So, here's some numbers that we took down at a meeting. And so I just literally take my iPad, click it, make that part of the Evernote, and I call it good. So what I like about simple apps like this is that, the app itself is not that extensively functional, but that's not the point. The point is the app plus the hardware functionality makes this really critical for my workflow. So, I have literally thousands of random notes in here. They are everything from kind of aborted ideas that I maybe wanted to work with later than do. We're actually working on a side project right now upstairs. This morning I had some ideas of what I wanted to call the project. I made that into an Evernote. And then also, it's kind of a reading app for me too, because I can also install plugins to my browser. I'm a Chrome browser user, and one of the things you can do with Chrome is quite literally put whole articles, by one click, whole articles into my Evernote, and then read it or review it later. So one of the things that I think is awesome, I love the app architecture in the Apple universe. I think that's pretty clever and smart. There's amazing apps, but I think the critical thing to make this more of a useful workflow toy is find the 4 or 5 apps that really do provide the functionality you need in the universe of where you're living at. And so in my mind, I do use this quite a bit. It's what whenever I'm out of my office, in fact, I use this a lot more than I do my laptop now because on my laptop I'm reading things as opposed to really producing. But I use things like Evernote as kind of the glue to put them all together. And so finding 1 or 2 apps, I think, that really are your go-to apps for everything is really critical for me. And it's not hard to see what's critical for me because they're always in my home row. So these are literally the 6 applications I spend the most time in. And it's go-to every time. Yeah?
Is there a way to organize all the notes?
There is. I'm not very organized, so I don't use those features. But the Evernote way of doing that is you actually create them in notebooks. So you can either tag individual notes with words that allow you to find those tags later, or you can literally say, I want all the notebooks. Like in this case, I've sort of tagged these. So these are my recipes, these are my quantitative research notes, these are meeting notes. But I'm not very good at that. So now everything just gets dumped into the master folder. What I like about that is that I can actually search all those notes too. And to give you kind of an idea of some of the other things I do with this, we have a printer upstairs that has a scanner on it. And one of the features, it took us a while to figure out, but you can actually put things into the scanner and even email them to yourself. One of the things you can do with Evernote is Evernote, with a free account, gives you an email address. If you send anything to that email address, it puts it in your Evernote account. So if I have a document that I want to read, I literally go put it in the scanner, I send it to that email address. It's a one-button thing on our printer, and then magically when I leave the office, once it syncs, I have that document available to me via Evernote. So it's really a way to just put a bunch of crap that I'm from everywhere, scan everything, and then call it good. I've started doing that with bills now. Once a month I take all the bills that I don't care to organize, and I literally just scan them into one big PDF file, throw it on Evernote because it makes it searchable, and you can then search inside those PDF documents. So if I know I need the power bill from June 2007, I can type in the word June 2007 Northwest Energy and probably find that PDF file.
Are those stored on your iPad or on a cloud?
They're actually stored in the cloud, but once you sync the note to your iPad, then it's also stored in your iPad as well.
You remember that when I emailed myself my iBook, it said two options. One was open in iBook and the other said other. As you download or use these kinds of apps like Evernote, you will get that choice to open certain documents. Somebody sends me a PDF or something, I can open it in Evernote or in PDF Reader. So there's actually interoperability between the apps as well. So sometimes instead of it being standalone, now your email is actually connected to it as a downloadable location for that content.
Could you use that voice recognition software to create captioning on video?
I think it would take you forever. You mean cycling it through? It's listening to itself?
Yeah, I'm looking for a way to
Chuck?
capture like 30 hours of video at a time.
Chuck knows this stuff.
So, I'm sorry, I missed part of the question. What were you
I'm
trying to
trying to find a way to caption like 30 hours of video.
Caption 30 hours of video.
It's for closed captioning.
That's a tough one.
Come talk to me later. I can help you.
Yeah, there you go. I've got solutions.
Yeah, it would be good if you could just plug like your recording, turn it on, play the video, and then get the transcript popping out at the end.
Have a way.
I've used it on a PC before, and it's okay. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's okay.
The problem is you're actually...
10. What are you talking about?
You're actually going, it's not on the iPad, it's headed out to some server in some other country probably that's doing the computations of turning the audio signal into a language. What? Yeah, they all are, every one of them. We don't have the processing power to do that. So you are always going to be limited probably in duration, maybe some of the service issues. Of course, the NSA is eavesdropping on all of it, so they know what you're saying. We're working on it, I'm sure, in the world, because that's a huge need.
Because there's some students that just can't write or can't type, but they can speak.
Well, I have to say that of all the voice recognition so far, I think this is iPad 3 only, but the voice recognition that exists on iPad 3 works the best of the non-commercial apps.
Okay.
So, you don't have to pay for that. It just automatically works. Some mornings when I'm feeling grumpy and I don't want to touch a keyboard, I'll do morning emails via voice recognition, and it's good enough. You start speaking in kind of weird ways. You slow down a little and articulate a little better, which is kind of funky. But I've noticed, or I do believe that that the voice recognition on the iPad is better than everything that you can do minus a $200 piece of software. So.
And it's also be used for language labs.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
your device understands you, there's a good chance a human will. But it also does some funny things too. Other questions?
Would you do a workshop like this for second language learning? How we might move second language learning pedagogy?
I would be happy to try to arrange one. That's not my area of expertise by any means. I wonder who's doing that. I know the language lab on campus has got a lot of technology, and a lot of that now can be done mobilely. And there are some interesting things about blog language changing, so you can have discussions around the world in different languages and nobody knows it.
But specifically, I'd love to see something that would allow us to do distance learning of a second language that has a different script than the Roman alphabet. So that if we bring Hindi here next year, that the Hindi script can flow along the bottom of the stream as the students are interacting with the instructor here and also remotely at Missoula College.
There are some kind of teleprompter-like programs people are using iPads for, but I don't know about different languages, although that's what we've got a gentleman here who might want to take on another task. I don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think you'd almost have to have a transcriber typing that in.
Be aware you can set your keyboard. There's gobs of keyboards, so you can bring up a different language keyboard instantly. In fact, you have a switch, so I can toggle through all of my different keyboards.
We should do a workshop on it.
Just go to your keyboard preference and load them up.
With audio, there's technical limitations to interpreting audio. I do Arabic and Dari and Pashto for the University of Montana now, and one of the problems that we had, and I wasn't able to do voice recognition, is there's actually just research in those languages now. There's no phonetic recognition of software recognition from those languages because of the way they're structured. So you've only got 50 or 60 languages that are commonly transcribed into text from, automatically versus using some transcriber. That's growing every day, and Apple's got that's the max. And even Android and other platforms just don't have that yet. It's getting there. But that's where the biggest problem I would see with that is whether the language is even capable at this point of being recognized via software.
You said 50 to 60 though?
Yeah, there's a list. I've gone through 4 or 5 different Apple, Google's translates. There's a couple third-party ones that I've looked at, and they're all running about the same, and most of them are even less than that. I think one of the third-party that's most recognized and used in third-party apps is down to 16, but it does it really, really well.
Is that the Dragon?
Yeah, some people that do Dragon, it's the API. I can't remember their...
Learn it Housebit? Learn
I
out
just loaded up
Housebit?
more keyboards. So this button here shows up. So when I click on that, I can toggle through. This is, I think, Cherokee. This is Hindi. So,
Did you know you can also like push that button and hold it down, and it'll pop up a list of all the ones that you have? Yeah. So
yeah,
and then you can scroll through them.
Is there such a thing as Braille? Braille?
External.
To write.
Getting
There is
certified.
external.
She's got to be able to
It's
write
external? It's
stories
external.
in Braille for the blind.
They've got accessory support for Braille keywords.
So you could run like JAWS on, or
Okay. And then she's got to learn all these books in Braille. And then write some.
I don't know.
It's an external accessory for keyboards. It would be nice to be able to write Braille on that, though.
I know.
You know, there might, I don't know, I haven't looked for an app. I mean, it seems like,
What did you
I know you can
think?
write Morse code.
They've got
Actually,
external
you go to
accessories or actual Braille
apple.com/accessibility.
keyboards you can get that are iOS accessible.
It will talk about some of those other devices that are available for the iPad and for the Mac. So apple.com/accessibility, I believe it is.
These are alternates.
For Braille input devices, it's apple.com. I think it's /accessibility, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'm at it right now. Still showing iOS 5. Is that state constant?
Yeah. Sign language. There's apps for sign language as well for the iOS devices already. And if you go to that page, there's also more information on that
right
page.
at the bottom right, Braille displays, right?
Yeah. All that should still be the same with iOS 6.
Yeah.
Boy, this is a groove. Any other questions? Wrap it up until next semester. If it's helpful.
Semester, why are we only doing this once a semester?
Yeah, about every month.
Do you know how useful this is?
I can Photoshop another poster.
I mean, it's 1 hour. You can just
Should be
do.
like a training series.
Yeah.
What time? I mean, I wasn't kidding. A lot of people can't. I'm in a faculty meeting right now.
I'm preparing my lecture,
too.
but it's, you can do noon or 4 to 5 or 8 in the morning. There's these hours that are
Well,
more
if somebody
taken
wants
than
to
others.
talk to maybe President Engstrom and see if we can get some brown bags.
Well, I could see some kind of online discussion group, forum, something like that.
I think it almost has to be free flow and
Yeah.
who knows where it's going to go. That's again, when I created this, I wanted informal people to come and.
Sorry to be old-fashioned, but I really like the hands-on
Yeah, I know.
social conversation. Just then we can go do the online work ourselves, but just this is a catalyst to all the things we can do on our own.
And with the forum, you could all kind of maybe get doing things, and then when you actually meet, you have things to talk about.
That's what would be helpful.
But I'd also
Yeah.
to
Actually try it.
let us do tree work.
Right.
Well, you know,
Make a blogger page.
Josh is offering to do another
What?
one next month.
Yes.
Right? Is that what that movement was?
I would be happy.
You know, I can check into it again.
Try monthly, or twice a semester, 3 times a semester.
To solve some of the issues, to get the information out there, one thing that I know the CS Club is working on trying to do with our lectures and stuff we do is get an iTunes U account through the University of Montana to put it out there since you've got you and log in and control that way. So maybe if we do in-house recordings and put up an iTunes U, that can be accessible and they can easily access information, put text or questions and other stuff along with that to make a informal for.
There's already one for the university, so somebody could set up a class for this and do it that way. So there's already an account for the university.
Yeah, I talked to the people
So
and they just
you can start a class. Somebody could be, it wouldn't be that tough.
Well, maybe we'll start out trying to keep it simple, because the last one was such a catastrophic success, we didn't do it again for 2 years.
We noticed.
Anyway, well, we can, if informal, really informal is fine, we can put these together pretty quick. I can tap people. I was going to have Jonathan also go into more. He does photography, he does art, he works with styluses. My area is in radio transmission of data, optics, camera stuff, and just playing around with dongles. We've got Jason does like a good reader, PDF conversions, online teaching materials. Literally no one's an expert. I have assistive tech folks. I've got folks who are using them with kindergarten reading classes. I've got people who are really pushing the whole Apple TV and all of the potential there. So it's I just thought Udo for the grown-up stuff, and me.
I volunteer my time also. I'm at the bookstore all the time. This is my job, is to talk about these types of things. So if you have a very specific question on that, in the technology department.
We had a visiting scholar from Hanoi, and we taught a class together last spring. She's
Is
back in
one of my
Hanoi.
dongles?
She's back in Hanoi now, and we want to teach our class together. Her in Hanoi, me here, time difference, virtual classroom. We want to be able to connect to the areas of South Asia that she works with. This was part of Brian Winchester's report on internationalizing the campus, that we should be connecting more to other classes and scholars around the world. We are ready to do it. We just need a little bit of help to figure out what technology we need and what the students need to have so that we can create it.
Almost we need a round table problem solving where people bring the problems and the solutions. The iPad, I think, has forced a philosophical change on all of us. I don't want to get too lectury, but we now are in an era of no experts. Basically, we have a lot of specialists, and with 400 and some thousand iOS apps, nobody knows this stuff, and it changes daily. So basically, I can take somebody who's never held an iPad before, and say, you know what? Let's create digital children's books in a foreign language for this mobile platform, and not have any reservations about it at all. Because I look at a lot of this stuff as 10-minute fixes. The iPad does everything a tiny bit. It does nothing completely. It is not the end all of everything. So once we get over the idea of the investment, saying, well, that's often what people do. They look at it and say, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. If you do that with your car, drive around, man, I should have bought a pickup, should have bought a pickup, should have bought a sedan, should have bought a sedan. You make decisions, you understand what it does, and you use that for its best. But frankly, we're all doing that. So now the problem is, how do we tap into that knowledge? Somebody asked me about dongles. I can go off forever. I showed Chuck, who works for Apple, stuff. You ever done this? Never seen it. He's almost guaranteed. I said, you ever throw a piece of paper over your iPad and trace what's there? It's a great way to practice drawing stuff. Want to learn how to draw a horse? That was one I showed him. Didn't know about it. I actually am collecting these things now. You ever put it in a suspension cradle, like a baby jump up, and shot it up and down in a doorway, and got the sine wave it creates, which is why they project it onto a screen?
Right? Someone's going to make a lot of money if they get into this. They can be the experts and go all over.
But again, each piece is tiny. Because I could have gone into physics apps, but I don't know if I have a physicist here. Jonathan could go and do storybook apps. I don't know if we've got a need for that. Photography, we do tons with that. I do lots of photography. I like slow motion, high speed digital imaging. You do intervalometer stuff.
There's an app for that.
Yeah, you name it. And we may be able to find somebody who's experimented with it. And that's not even just working with kids with disabilities. So right now, I'm doing this to self-motivate. I want to learn from you. I want to know, when you ask a question, great. Now, as an instructional technologist here, now I've got something to work with.
even
Mark,
yes,
do you believe when in a special field, for example, I have the theories of communication. I have idea about thinking and everything, but I haven't any experience in technology using as an engineer. Do you believe that we need special people as a technologist and special people which they have knowledge or education?
I think both. What Apple did, maybe, I don't think, check with Chuck, they sold us a chunk of real estate. And that real estate is ours to do with it almost anything we want. So in essence, they're probably scrounging to keep up with us because in our demands and our request for, the ultimate perfection in some object. But I also will give it to very young kids, and they take off. Or the app is written well for young students, engineers, pilots, doctors. I mean, it's whatever you want to do with this, except now it's also with, this, and with this, and with the cameras. I mean, it's all sorts of things. What we have now is a device, and we're finding applications for that. But there are going to be engineers who have to solve these problems or take us to where we, have never gone before. But then we have to have the users who say, "Gosh, this is making a world of difference in this small area. It's must have."
Even with all the apps that are out there now, you got to realize we're just now getting into this. Education is still on the, it's still on the bleeding edge of this technology. So if you have new ideas that you can't find solutions for, doesn't mean it can't happen. It can't be done. It can't be built. It can't be designed. Which is one reason we want to come here is find out, what goals education has for the technology. If you have an idea with, communication, if you can't find an app for that, there's people that can make an app for that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that's great about the iPad. I mean, even in videos that Apple publicizes for its use of accessibility and all this stuff, some of that stuff has surprised even the engineers in a WWDC class.
It's not always
amazing.
in their control.
No.
I will use it for something else. There are people who are saying, gosh, you're on irregular heartbeat, or what's going on? Stick the microphone on, pull the iPad towards you, and you're recording it, and do something with that information. I took a headache relief app. They're headache relief apps. I've played around with them, and they do something, but I'm not sure what. I took the speaker, an external speaker, because it's a low-frequency thumping sound with white noise across the top. Runs in the background, took the speaker, put it back down on my iPad, and turned on something that measures motion, a seismograph. And I'm looking at a graph of the sound the iPad is producing. And what was weird about it is I could see what I was feeling. And I had no idea what was happening, but it was like I could sense something. And that was what the app was supposed to do, to reduce headaches or brain pressure or something. But it was weird to be watching it while I'm feeling it. However, I've been dabbling in that for a long time with devices that allow kind of a feedback mechanism in order to teach graphing to kindergartners. So, I did that in a conference and said, I don't know if anyone's ever done this in the world. Probably, but...
Do we have any classes where all the students have iPads and we're trying to work on pedagogy with the...
In college?
Here?
There's very limited iPad access on campus.
There are some requests for our own college to get classroom sets to try different things. And a lot of those are one-app things. They just, this almost makes it worthwhile if we could just do this. There are lots of classes around MCPS that use it. And Paxton has a one-to-one. Students basically own the device. Second grade, all second graders and all fifth graders, and I think they were going to do a kindergarten classroom too. So, and when we take surveys, a lot of students have, it's surprising, may not have them out, but they have them. And almost every student has access to a laptop now, so we can kind of make that beginning of the mobile conversion.
If you take iPads and iPhones in combination, the number of student population is a pretty high percentage.
For a year and a half, I've been trying to say that we have a 5-person class, like the new class on South and Southeast Asia I'm talking about. And I want all the students to have the iPad or an iPhone. and the instructor, and then I want the pedagogy explicitly critiqued as we do the class, so that everything about the materials that they use, the evaluation, the assessment, the lecture delivery, the discussion, all within an iPad framework for now. Just try it. Because they bring everything to class anyway, and I do not chase it out. I do not tell them to put it away. I tell them to use it. I point to them and say, you look this up. Here, what is that? Okay, everyone do a quick definition survey. We are using the device in class, but I want to see it done in this college, in this room where we have 25 students where we can actually study the effect.
There are a lot of holdouts still that, are saying, well, wait, what's Microsoft's tablet going to be like? Maybe that's the direction. I know schools are thinking, well, what about the Kindle Fire, or what about the Nexus 7? And I think as long as, that's why I started off saying the reason this is iPads is because that's what I run into. I could do it with a Kindle Fire or a Nexus 7, but the amount of iPads is, in a lot of fields, overwhelming. In special ed, it's pretty much it. Nothing else is
there a problem
trying.
using the brand, or?
You get into the nuances, and then, well, what if this app isn't available, or this doesn't have AirPlay, or this one I have an SD card slot so I can load my documents, or this one runs the Microsoft is going to run a lot of stuff that this can't. And
there's in higher ed especially, the literature I've read, the argument for the iPad is overwhelmingly in the accessibility features. And there is nothing else on the market that's even in the ballpark. And so it would require years of work on another manufacturer's behalf to catch up. These are really basic things like Braille, compatibility.
Well, it's excellent for international students, too.
There is another avenue that I push with these, and that is, if you think about how much this device gets in the way of where you're going, that's where cheap screens or things that aren't very reactive, or you have to hit things hard, or they don't quite work well, or the audio isn't smooth. All of those things bring the device to the surface. You hand one of these to a kid, they aren't using an iPad, they are in some other world. And if the device demands some of your attention, you aren't immersed in the learning experience. You haven't freed up all of your capacities to engage the knowledge. Instead, you're operating a device that is providing you some information. And I want this thing to disappear. I don't care what it looks like, how it feels. I want to be where the content is. You don't study the paperback book. You're lost in the story, turning pages. But if the pages are stuck together, or missing, the whole experience falls apart. So that's where, right now, I think this is more of a leader, and Microsoft's got a ton of R&D into a smooth operating machine as well. That's, to me, what makes this thing so worthwhile is it melts in your hand. It disappears. Whereas the other devices, okay, and ads come up, or I'm moving around thinking, dang it.
There's nothing that says we have to make the students have a competitive marketplace for their pedagogical tools. We assign one book, and it's published, and we make them buy it.
The problem is it's one of the more expensive devices out there, and we're dealing with a company that for a long time has been, I don't know how you describe it, it's not maybe enterprise friendly. You go to the IT people and it's like, oh no.
Do you know how much students pay on their books? Most of my students are paying $500-600 a semester.
I
no longer assign books.
I've told
because they can't afford
schools
them.
you can recover the cost of these devices by simply making a hot lunch app where the kids actually choose what they want. And it's sent to the district office. They make the food on demand, bring it, and you know what? You can scan your code. A machine could actually dump the food on the tray, but you've just eliminated waste. So I'm looking at hot lunch to recover the cost. How much does that cost? Go into those big pools. Go ahead.
Even more than that, you get the size. Size of classrooms is a big issue, especially in lower, not so much in the high end, but in K through 12. Size of classroom, teachers, all this stuff, time per student. When you integrate something like the iPad into the classroom and do a teaching style like Khan Academy, where the focus is on work in classroom and lecture at home, then you get the savings of teacher salaries and you get more effective learning, more effective teaching, and more use of technology, so you're learning more in that same amount of time. I've got a 6 and 7-year-old. My son and daughter both had iPads when iPads came out 2 years. When I upgraded, so 2 years ago, when I upgraded to the second one.
3.
It's been 3, but when I upgraded, they took my old one and I bought the other one. So they've had it for 2 years. And before he got into kindergarten, he was already more proficient at math than they are when they finish kindergarten. Now he's doing second grade math in first grade, and that's just by using Khan Academy and his iPad at home. I mean, that's nothing. And that's just starting. You know, once the iPad, like you were saying, how you get...
Can we do that in higher education?
Yeah, we can. The problem is it's still, the people making decisions are still not... there's a generation gap.
Well,
not so much in age, but just in
there are
theories.
institutions that are doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Seton Hill, you look at Abilene Christian. Ohio State just announced, Ohio State gave every faculty member an iPad and strongly recommended each and every student go buy an iPad now because they are moving to a full digital curriculum. That means full iTunes U, that means digital textbooks. And so they just announced that for this fall. And that's Ohio State. So we're talking about a major 4-year public institution that has done that. So it's moving now from the privates to the publics where we're starting to see this adoption. UCSF just did a study, and they gave iPads to all their faculty, and the way they did that was they stopped printing paper. They stopped using the copy machine to make memos and like that, and they were able to pay for all the iPads for all the faculty their very first year just by saving the printing costs. And that came from the CIO's office. So it just takes that vision and momentum to go to that next step. And higher education is following and trailing K-12 right now. K-12 superintendents and school boards are saying, we see the vision, we know we need to change education, and this is a tool to help us get there, and we're moving on that. Higher education is just a little bit further behind that curve.
There are a lot of legacy beliefs in technology, too, that this thing struggles with. You know, there's a whole networking and enterprise and security side of it, but then there's another side of, if we invest in this, it must last 6 years. And, you know, or we invest enterprise-wide with absolutely one standard, and obviously these things don't play well in that environment. So if we can kind of change it, we don't look at a textbook and say, this textbook has got to last 6 years. It's got to last the better part of the semester.
The textbook for my class that I would ordinarily teach is $143. I refuse to use it anymore.
They go to aid.com,
I'm
get a
using one
previous
that's
edition.
$67, ebook at $47, and next year I will not be using one at all.
Or make your own with an iBook.
Well, I'm not to that yet. I want them to access credible sources, but this is the price of one semester of their textbooks. And those textbooks are not recyclable in any other way other than for the paper.
Yeah, I guess the textbook to me is kind of an easy argument because you can see big chunks of numbers and they can add up. If I start looking this at across all sorts of medical apps to find out, you know, personal things, keeping your banking a lot tighter than you would normally, the idea of being a much more aware consumer, the idea of having all of your stuff with you. I mean, what does that reduce in terms of time? How much can I stay on task if I'm walking around with everything wherever I am? The idea of having, if you...
I'm just thinking pedagogy, though.
Yeah.
Higher education, pedagogy, transforming the classroom so that it's not a dichotomy between lecture and online.
So if you go to Abilene Christian and /Mobility, they actually just released, they've done a 2 full-year study. So 2 years ago, they required and or provided an iPod Touch or an iPhone to each and every student. This last year, they did it with iPads, and all the faculty members used in the classroom. They've actually just released their first study where they've actually gone back and looked at what were the outcomes. So it's Abilene Christian, and I think it's /Mobility, if I remember right.
Where is it located?
They're in Texas. They're in Texas, but they've actually got the report, and they've been presenting it at a lot of the different, national conferences now, things like that. But you can download their entire PDF. It talks about, all the results, the outcomes, the pedagogy that they've applied, how they're actually used in the classroom, digital clickers, and all the different things that they've done, and what the actual outcomes are based off of that. So you can download. That's one of the first studies I've seen now that's actually come out.
And, also people are looking for the pedagogy, the way, and there's 50 million ways, and there's going to be 50 million more tomorrow.
Yep.
But I think a lot of the excellent practices of good teachers you can port over by looking where this thing, or what it does well. Computers, they compute. yet we often don't use them for computing. We try to use them for critical thinking, and they don't do that well. But we don't let the kids use the calculator because we need them to do that. I think what we need to do is just turn over what these devices do best and use it. And then it does free you up. It's in little pieces, though. It's not like everything's all different. But it does make a change. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Chuck, for swinging by. And I guess it sounds like you're going again next month.
Thank you for your lovely lecture.
Thanks for coming. I think